Welcome everyone. Again, today we'll be speaking to Peter Cruchley, who's another author from the forthcoming book, Deconstructing Whiteness, Empire and Mission. So welcome, Peter. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. So my name is Peter Cruchley. I'm the director of the Commission for World Mission and Evangelism with the World Council of Churches, and just started in that role this year.
Thank you. Could you briefly describe what your chapter's about, please?
Sure. So I tried in the chapter to explore whiteness using, if you like, the three main white characters in the Bible who kind of present themselves, and then offer with a fourth, as it were, minor character in the biblical witness, a model of and for whiteness that could address its colonial past and hegemonic present. So we worked looking at Pilate, Pilate's centurion, and Pilate's wife, and each of these highlight different dimensions of whiteness in its colonial, as it were, Christian form. And the chapter, connects with each of these biblical figures a missionary figure from the kind of history of the London Missionary Society, to kind of illustrate how, if you like, Protestant Christian mission has a particular responsibility for both creating the ideologies of white supremacy, but also for teaching the world to be racist. And so using some of those missionary figures who kind of over a historical period also highlight to us how white Christians modify whiteness in ways that reinscribe my privilege particularly. But then I wanted, with a fourth figure, to see if there are models of whiteness that could offer us some further reflection. And so chose the figure of Lydia, who's the first European convert to Christianity, who I think offers us a model of whiteness which participates and resources without controlling, that embraces faith but doesn't enforce it, stands with those who are unfairly imprisoned by empire rather than criminalizing and justifying empire's violence. And Lydia is a person in the biblical story who steps forward, but she also steps back. And I think in all of those characters, if you like, is a kind of historical dynamic, a biblical vision that challenges us in our vision of where whiteness has come from and what we need to do to dismantle it. So that's kind of what I was aiming for, Carol, in that respect.
Thank you. So what made you take this particular approach to writing your chapter?
Well, I think, not least because I'm part of that tradition and movement, and part of the Protestant Christian mission tradition. And so, wanting to highlight, speak to myself, address myself in one sense within a text, inevitably as a pastor, as a theologian, the biblical kind of dimensions always help, for me at least, to unpack the work and root the work at the same time. So these kind of things all kind of gather up into why that approach. And obviously, particularly in this period of which the chapter is written, I'm still working for the organization the London Missionary Society became. And so we had developed work already in Council for World Mission around legacies of slavery that bring these things together, the kind of historical critique and theological reflection that challenges us to seek transformation. So I think that was really behind that kind of approach.
Okay, thank you. So what would you say has shaped your social conscience?
Well, clearly, like all of us, I'm the product of the many conversions I've been invited into by many friends and colleagues, and over my kind of my life, especially framed in the experience of growing up in the UK in the 70s and 80s, a particularly virulent and violent time for racists on the streets of places like Birmingham, where I kind of grew up. But also because I sometimes describe myself as a troubled missionary child. My parents were missionaries in Zambia with the London Missionary Society. I'm also a troubled missionary adult, working for the mission agency that the London Missionary Society became. But all of these have kind of exposed me to witness from Black and other people of color within the faith as to what transformation looks like, what it requires, especially from those to unclench, their hands are from power, and also a vision of what change can be like. But I think especially to feel that we're seeking to be part of a movement that creates transformation, that is decolonial in its perspective. And that's all something I've grown into just in this, these last few years of the Legacies work, at the leadership of others. So I'm the child of many and the product of many, I think.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think are the biggest challenges to the church and wider society in terms of creating frameworks for social justice?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is, I guess, well, certainly I think for, let's say, for the church, is that ironically the church doesn't want to change itself. It only wants to change others. And that's been part of the kind of tragic irony of, the, if you like, the kind of trajectory of Christian mission in these last, 200 and 300 years, is that in many respects, the church has used mission as a way to change others, so that the church doesn't need to change, especially its particular position in the context of society and its vision of its power and privilege. And so I think this sense of a resistance to change, whilst ironically using the language of change, persists. And I see that still. I mean, I now work for an organization who puts transforming discipleship at the center of its kind of mission model. And yet whether we really deliver transformation is a difficult question as way to answer or to prove. So this, I think, is part of the fact that we don't embrace where this change is already happening. And in fact, in the many contexts where already these sort of changes of social justice, whether it's racial justice, gender justice, justice for the earth or for sexual minorities or whatever, the church cannot be trusted to be a partner in this for many reasons, because not least because we haven't lived up to our big words of unity and have rather lived out the small-minded ways of division. And I think for our wider society, I find this really a complex thing, and maybe I'm already being too crude just talking about the church in the way that I have. I look at society and I see the huge pressures to prevent racial justice unleashed in so many contexts, globally and nationally and locally. But at the same time, I also see, many signs of those who are outraged at, racial injustice and, this in many forms. And so in lots of spaces, this is already being created. It's already being witnessed to. Clearly, we are not going to see it in the centers of power who don't want this, but at the margins, this is already taking place. And I think that's the key commissioning, if you like, to use missionary language, that some of these spaces give us to say, this is a reality in our grasp if we can also embody it now. And I think that's the challenge for many of us.
Thank you. So just to end, what do you hope people might take from reading your chapter?
But I think I've tried to listen in the processes I've been privileged to be part of in the Legacies of Slavery work to African and African descendant people, speaking specifically about the power of truth telling. And I know, Carol, pain of that when you place that in the context of the missionary archives that are a vital space to tell the truth from. And I hope this mixture of approaches is in this way a kind of opportunity for truth telling that helps white church institutions step further and stay longer in the urgent work of anti-racism, because we are prone to falling away and falling apart. But this is a reminder of how deeply intentional and concerted was the effort to create this white supremacist vision and to teach the world to be racist. And therefore, those of us in institutions, those of us rooted in whiteness, have particular responsibilities to address what whiteness is like and its history and dismantle it. And I hope in those ways the article is a further witness to that.
Thank you for that. So thank you for sharing with us today from your chapter. Yeah. And I'm sure that people watching will be looking forward to reading what you have to say in your chapter. So thank you.
No problem, Carol. Thank you so much. Good to be with you.